have seen the torch of freedom pass from hand to yearning hand, and the vision of our fathers spread hope throughout this land, as the dream some fought and died for in my heart becomes my own. I will strive to keep her promise, America, my home. America, America, may God bless America, and freedom reign across America, my home. From the shorelines to the prairies, to the cities great and small, we have reaped the fruits of justice and liberty for all.
So with deep appreciation for the blessings of freedom that we know in this wonderful land of ours, I'm Dr. George Simon, welcoming you to another edition of Character Matters. This is the program where we talk about what I consider to be the defining issue of our time, the character crisis that we face and that affects so many aspects of our lives, from our individual relationships, our family relationships, our community relations, our politics, our business affairs, every aspect of our lives. And that's why I have written and spoken about the character issue for so many years on my blog at www.drgeorgesimon.com or www.manipulative-people.com. Either URL will take you to the same place. And on these weekly broadcasts on UCY.tv, and in my 4 books, In Sheep's Clothing, Understanding and Dealing with Manipulative People, the international bestseller, and the other bestseller, Character Disturbance, the Phenomenon of Our Age, the go-to book for understanding all the nefarious characters you're likely to encounter in your life. And then, of course, my book, The Judas Syndrome, for the Christian faith community. And then, last but not least, my book with Dr. Kathy Armistead, How Did We End Up Here? The Relationship Partner Survivor's Guide to Navigating Through this character-disordered world of ours. And then, of course, this program. Every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. And if you want to join the conversation tonight on UCY.tv, Character Matters, give us a call at 501-258-8326. That's 501-258-8326. And I'll be happy to take your call. Well, another interesting week. And unfortunately, another tragedy. We have no details at the moment, but a pretty tragic state of affairs in Texas, just outside of San Antonio. I think the latest count is 26 dead in another mass shooting. We had the attacks in New York just days ago, and now a mass shooting in Texas. You know, however this goes down, however this goes down, whatever turns out to be uh, the uh, the reality here of who did this and why, I can pretty well guarantee you that character will be playing a role. Of course, there are always those cases where someone is in the throes of some psychosis, where they truly don't know what they're doing. They've lost rationality. They've lost their ability to judge what's real and what's not real. They've lost their ability to know right from wrong. But those cases are so extraordinarily rare. These days, we are plagued by individuals who, in their anger, in their hurt, or whatever the case may be, have no willingness to exercise any control over their emotions or their behavior. And notice I said willingness, not power, because we always have the power. Unless you're in the throes of some severe mental illness, you have the power. That doesn't always mean, unfortunately, these days you'll have the character. And then, of course, we also have these ideologues, these archetypal maniacs who have been with us since the dawn of time, who are determined to dominate, who are determined to be masters, rulers of the world, and won't be content until everyone's kneeling at their feet and basically subservient to them and their ideology. And that's a character issue too. So, however this plays out, I know you can already tell how the media will treat this and what kinds of issues will be raised. First, of course, there will be more discussion about firearms in general and their prevalence and their ready availability. And of course, there wasn't a similar discussion about cars when this maniac in New York drove a truck through a crowd of people over a long stretch of road or sidewalk, bike pathway. There wasn't any outcry for, automobiles kill more people than any other machine we've made. There's no public outcry to take them all off the road. The outcry there has more to do with their pollution effect. The fact that they're a big source of CO2 emissions. Everybody would be happy if there were more electric vehicles and more hybrids, et cetera, so that wouldn't be a problem. But the vehicles themselves, they're okay, even though they are involved in the deaths of more people. Far more. Every day. So you already know where this is going to go. There'll be more talk about all of this stuff, and there'll be very little attention paid to the number one problem of our time. And that is how many people we have among us who are dysfunctional in some way, who don't have proper control over their emotions or their behavior, and who, in their hurt or their anger or whatever, lash out in unspeakable ways. And then and then refuse to pay any kind of price. They don't take their lives in desperation. They just don't want to pay the price. It's a sad, sad state of affairs. We still don't know. Very much about the shooter in Las Vegas a couple of months ago. And we don't know much about his motives, but one thing we do know, the sheriff has been talking, and I'd given an interview to a reporter for an article that appeared in the National Enquirer probably maybe 3.5 weeks ago now. And my conjecture at that time was that this person who was a high roller, big stakes gambler, he'd made a lot of money, but he liked to throw it around. And he especially loved the image of being a high roller. And my hunch, the most logical explanation for his behavior, whether or not he came under the influence of a radical group or not, I wouldn't rule that out. But my number one hunch was that things had not been going well in his lifestyle. And he was angry and upset about it. And, of course, he couldn't find the culprit within himself and his own character. He would have had to have blamed the evil Sin City for its corrupting influence. And if he had come under the influence of any radical group, they would have reinforced that notion. This is how these radical ideologies win converts, especially these lone wolves. They basically tell them that things are not going well for you, not because of anything wrong with you, your decision making or your character. No, it's the evil system that you're in. And it's the evils in the environment in which you are. And therefore, you have the right to correct that. Take it into your own hands to correct that. And make a statement, so to speak. And so we learned this just this week from the sheriff that indeed, over the past 2 years, this man was not doing very well, gambling, losing a bunch of money. Things were not going as they had gone for many years. He actually had done quite well for years at the tables, betting a lot and winning a lot, and coming out ahead. As a matter of fact, he had pretty much developed a lifestyle of gaming. But over the last couple of years, things were not going well. And he needed somebody to blame other than himself and the defects in his own character. Boy, it's so hard to look at ourselves. There are so many lies we tell. The worst ones are the lies that we tell ourselves about who we are and what makes us do the things we do. So I suspect that whether or not he came under the influence of some ideological group, ISIS, has claimed that he had come under their influence. But whether or not that's true, and I wouldn't rule that out when I was giving the interview, it turns out that my hunch about things not going well uh, being the being uh, the the prompting circumstance here. Turns out that may be correct. And it just underscores, unfortunately, the problem of our time, the number one problem of our time, and that is that individuals entering adulthood don't have the internal controls, the well-developed conscience necessary to function in a way that's responsible themselves and that ensures that they will behave responsibly toward others. They just don't have the internal mechanism. It hasn't been built into their character. That's the tragedy of our time. That's the tragedy of our time. The number one tragedy. And it gets virtually no attention. But I hope, it is my fondest hope, that it simply changes, that our focus turns to where it needs to change, to where it needs to turn, excuse me. And that is to the character issue. So we've got other things to talk about tonight, but you may have something on your mind too. You may have a relationship situation going on that you need some advice about. You may be dealing with somebody at work. You may just have a general question. Maybe you've read a couple of the articles on the blog, or maybe you've read something in one of the books, or maybe you just have a comment you think that others would be interested in. Whatever the case may be, if you want to join the conversation, give us a call at 501-258-8326. That's 501-258-8326, and I'll be happy to take your call. Well, coming up, folks, is Veterans Day, and for that reason, the next program, we'll try to fix things up so that you can be treated once again to the full version of the theme song that you hear at the beginning and the end of the program. America, My Home, a composition by myself and my beautiful wife, done before the turn of the new millennium, composed then, and meant as an anthem for the new millennium. And it became popular following the 9/11 attacks. And I'll be talking about it and its inspiration, and hopefully treating you to the whole thing, the entire rendition of America, My Home by Ricky David Tripp, who's the singer on the version that you hear on the opening and closing bumper. So be listening for that next time. And just once again, for those of you who may be just new to the program or tuning in for the first time, some words about the inspiration for the song and why you hear it on this program, and that is the interrelationship that freedom and character have always had. It was John Adams, as they were working feverishly to draft the final version of the Constitution, who said that this Constitution of ours would not work, basically, that it was meant only for what he called a religious and moral people. You see, that the founders understood. There's a principle at stake. The founders understood that when people have a solid internal moral compass, in other words, they know right from wrong, they understand the basics of human decency. When people have that, it's best to leave them alone. It's best to not oppress them in any way. You let folks with a solid internal moral compass have as much liberty, as much freedom as they can, and they will do wonderful things. And they will not only tend to prosper themselves, but they will tend to create opportunities for others as well. So freedom and character go hand in hand. And they also knew, the founders did, that in the absence of that, when people take license because they don't have that internal moral compass, that there's always a temptation on government's part to step in and to restrict freedoms as a way to control, basically, the social order. If you can't trust people to be good on their own, you have to regiment them. You have to regiment them. You have to impose that order externally, and that always involves curtailing freedom. So these are two things that are interdependent. And that's the sentiment that's in the song. Sentiment is about what makes or has made this country great. It's never been in our military might, which has been substantial for quite some time, and it's never been in our economic power, which has been substantial for quite some time. That's not where the greatness of America lies or has ever lied. It's always been in the character of our people. It's always been in the people of good character who take the values that we espouse seriously and live them out in their daily life, who take their responsibilities seriously. The people who make freedom possible, the people with those solid internal moral compasses. And when the majority of people have that, in other words, when we're just chock full of in the country of people of decent character, we thrive. We do fantastic things. De Tocqueville was quoted as saying what he never really said, but he was quoted as saying that America is great because it is good, and when it stops being good, it'll cease being great. He never said that. The quote's attributed to him. But truer words could never be spoken. We're great when we're good. Just that simple. And we stop being good, we're not great. And in this country, we have a huge problem right now. Huge. We have the highest percentage of our population of any free society on the planet, the highest percentage, so dysfunctional that we can't leave them on the streets. We have to lock them up in some kind of confinement and throw away the key. It's a disgrace. It's an absolute disgrace. And it all starts so early. Our families don't stay together. Marriages don't hold up. It used to be the rare event that families disintegrated. That was the rare event. And it used to be the rare event that families could not take care of themselves in such a way that they needed outside assistance. Today, what's the biggest division in your state government? More than likely, human services. Some people call this the nanny state, the welfare state. It's really just the tip of the iceberg. The problem is how many people are so dysfunctional that they can't behave responsibly, either toward themselves or toward anyone else. And until we focus attention there, nothing else is going to get better. There's no law that can fix it. There's no restriction on freedom that can fix it. It only limits the ability of decent people to do what they want to do and to lead free and productive lives. The only thing that will fix the problem is addressing it head on and doing what we need to do early on to foster appropriate character development in our young people. Now, you may have some disagreement with that, but you may also have some glaring examples that attest to the point. So, whatever the case may be, if you want to participate in the discussion tonight, or if you have a situation you'd like to talk about or share, give us a call at 501-258-8326. That's 501-258-8326. Well, this unfortunate incident in Texas is so heartbreaking. It appears that the person who shot these people in this church just outside of San Antonio, Texas, is himself dead. But unfortunately, he also killed at least 23 people. There are others seriously wounded, so we won't know for sure what the death toll will be for a while. It turns out that also also a victim in the shooting was the shooter's daughter, 14-year-old daughter. Whether this daughter was killed by her father or whether in the attempt to take the shooter out, there was basically friendly fire, we don't know. There's just not enough information yet. I'm reading here that the gunman has been identified as Devin P. Kelly, 26 years old. And, I'm sorry. I gave you incorrect information. I'm just reading this as it's come across. I gave you incorrect information. Let me correct that. The the 14-year-old daughter that was unfortunately killed in the shooting was the daughter of the pastor of the church. This was a Baptist church in this town just outside of San Antonio, and it was the pastor's 14-year-old daughter who was killed in this hail of gunfire. So, unfortunately, there's just not that much information right now. As more information comes in before I sign off tonight, if there's anything more of significance, I'll be happy to report it. But when these tragedies happen, the thing that hurts, well, I mean, of course, the tragic loss of innocent life. I mean, what can you say? But what bothers me so much beyond the tragic loss of innocent life and the message that it sends is where our attention always starts to turn when these things happen. We start pointing the fingers all kinds of places, except where we need to. And I'm also going to devote a couple of programs to an issue that I've wanted to wait until I could articulately speak on my evolving stance on the issue. But we're going to have a discussion about the role that healthcare plays. I see we have a caller calling in. I'm going to take this call and see. Hello and welcome to Character Matters.
Hi. I just wanted to call mainly just to thank you for everything you've done, because all the stuff that my husband and I have learned from you has just literally changed our life.
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate that. You have no idea how that kind of validation has always sustained me in my work.
Well, I'm feeling I'm just really nervous, but I'm also really emotional because, I mean, my husband and I, we both have just severe anxiety, and we both come from families where there's a lot of just character problems and narcissism, and we were just kind of a product of that for a long time. Mm-hmm. So when we found your work, it was kind of scary at first because we didn't really want to believe a lot of it, I think. But
right.
We've learned about it just mainly from you for years, and we've just come a long way. But I got to a point where I just really wanted to let you know that, and it's just been a really big journey for us, but you're at the head of that, truly.
Oh, well, thank you so much. You know, really, I'll tell you, I get two types of emails. I get about 50 or 60 emails a week. I get two types. About half of them are folks just saying something similar to you. And I can't tell you, I never get tired of hearing it. It's what's sustained me, because in the early days when I first started my work some 30 years ago, in the early days, I didn't have an audience, you know, especially among professionals. But one by one, through word of mouth, folks like yourself who found something of value in the work spread the word, and it spread just all by word of mouth. My first book, In Sheep's Clothing, became an international bestseller by word of mouth over the years.
Mm-hmm. And I've told lots of people about it too. So.
Well, you're the one, huh?
No.
Thank you. So all I can say is that it changed my life too. I let the folks who were in these situations teach me what we clearly didn't know enough about. And then I let the nefarious characters who were in relationships with folks teach me too. and it just changed my whole mindset. And so I really appreciate it very much.
Well, we really can't thank you enough. And I think for us, the main thing that just changed our whole life was just realizing that these people that were abusing us weren't a victim.
Mm-hmm.
And I would always, especially with my dad and my mom to a certain extent, but it's mainly my dad, I would always kind of view him as someone who couldn't help his behavior.
Mm-hmm.
And it kind of kept me locked in a situation where I was always pitying him and trying to please him and thinking that my behavior towards him could change him and could make him love me and respect me. And I never understood why none of that made a difference until I read your work, and it's helped me heal and really changed who I am, even in every aspect of my life, even in work.
Wow.
I mean, I have boundaries with people. I'll tell people no, where my mom and my dad, they kind of raised me to please everybody and to never, ever say no. And that's been really difficult, but now I'm finally to a place where I feel comfortable having my own boundaries.
Wow. So it sounds like you've been on a quest for some personal empowerment, and you found some help along the way here in the work. Well, I couldn't be happier. That's what it's all about.
Yes, and it's the same story for my husband too. And it's
Now, you said that both of you struggle with some anxiety. Is that right?
Oh, yes. I mean, when I was a kid, probably 12 or so, I had to actually go into a hospital because of it. They said I had the actual anxiety disorder.
Right.
And it's always been part of my life, and I still struggle with it. But I think the personal empowerment and trying to not let people walk all over me has definitely helped in that respect, but I still do struggle so much with it. And I'll just...
And have you been able to get state-of-the-art treatment for your anxiety?
No. I don't even know what that would be necessarily.
Well, let me tell you, because this is a specialty area of mine, and there's another thing that gives me great joy, and that's to help folks who struggle with anxiety get rid of it.
That would be nice.
First of all, you can take this really secure thought. As bad as the anxiety symptoms can get at times, and for anybody who's suffered anything like a panic or a really agitated kind of bout of anxiety, maybe an agitated depression where they maybe even had to be hospitalized to be treated. They know anybody who's had anxiety in that extreme knows how uncomfortable and how debilitating the symptoms can be. But one thing you can kind of take to the bank is that as distressing and as painful as the symptoms can be, nobody's ever perished from an anxiety disorder. Not that we know of, anyway.
Yeah, that's true.
It can make you pretty darn miserable. It can even get you to the point where you think that life might not be worth living when you're so miserable and you want it to stop. But it's never killed anybody. And the fact is that the cognitive behavioral strategies that we now know represent the real cure, not medicines. Some of the medicines that are used to treat it, some of the medicines have their own problems.
Yeah, that's why I've avoided them.
Yeah.
I don't like to take any sort of pills, period.
But we know that the cognitive behavioral strategies that are effective are long lasting and can actually help retrain your brain, rebalance chemicals in your brain so that one day you can be free. So what I'm going to ask you to do, if you want, is do you ever go to my blog, how did you discover my work in the program?
Well, I don't really remember exactly. It's been quite a few years. I remember my husband, we were in a church at the time, and the church was just very negative and just abusive, and he was kind of searching for answers, and I know he came to you through that, through realizing that these people were narcissistic at the head of the church. So he's the one that originally found it and bought your book, and I know that he reads your blog, and I do read it sometimes too.
Okay. Well, go to the blog at drgeorgesimon.com or manipulative-people.com and go to the contact page and contact me through that page. There's a contact feature there. You press the button and it'll shoot me an email to my personal email, and it prioritizes it. And just introduce yourself, say that we talked on the radio, and I will send you some state-of-the-art information about how to get rid of that anxiety once and for all.
Wow, that would be amazing.
Yeah.
So on the site, there's under the contact section?
Yeah.
That's where I find that?
Yeah.
Okay, well, that would be good.
I'll send you the outline of a 4-step, tried-and-true method that works.
Wow, that's awesome. And I know you'll know what I mean when I say that sometimes it just feels like a cage, like you can't get out of it. And even when I know that the thoughts I'm having are irrational, I still can't stop. And I know it's getting bad when the thought I always return to is something happening to my husband. And then I will just have these ridiculous, not a fantasy, but just a scene that plays in my head of something happening to him.
Intrusive thoughts.
It doesn't stop. And then it gets to a point where I have like heart palpitations and I'm sweating, and it's all over something that hasn't even happened. Like he's perfectly fine, but it's just like a cycle that I get into, and then sometimes I'm out of it, but it'll just get triggered. And it's awful. And I know he has a similar experience, but not quite as ridiculous as that. But he still struggles with it too. So I know he's really going to benefit from any information that you could give us.
Well, the method works. It's simple. It's a simple method in that it's very straightforward and it's quite clear. It's just basically 4 steps. So it's simple in that regard. That doesn't equate with easy. Any strategy, of course, any discipline, it's like learning yoga or anything else like that. Any discipline requires practice and requires some effort. But I can tell you that it does work. So I'm happy to send some information along to you.
Okay, that would be awesome.
Well, I can't thank you enough for your call. I really appreciate it. Like I said, the validation means a lot. It always has.
Well, we consider you truly like a gift from God, because we prayed for help and knowledge, and God gave us you. So we consider it an answer to our prayers.
You're very sweet, and I thank you especially from the bottom of my heart for recommending my books to others. That's been my livelihood for the last several years, and I'm going to be going on one last brief speaking tour next year in only 6 select markets. So I'll have information posted on the blog about that probably in the next maybe 5 or 6 weeks. Okay?
Okay, well, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. It's been
great talking to you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Well, what a wonderful call. I never tire of hearing such things. I really do. Really do appreciate it when folks take the time. I was mentioning to the caller that I get about 50 or 60 emails a week. And, folks they usually have two stories to tell. About half the time, they're calling to do just what the caller did. They're writing to do just what the caller did, just to say that they found some validation, that they found some degree of personal empowerment as a result of reading one of my books. Maybe it was In Sheep's Clothing, maybe it was Character Disturbance or The Judas Syndrome. How did we end up here? One of the books. Or they found some articles on the blog at manipulative-people.com. And they got empowered, and they just wanted to say thanks. And believe me, I appreciate that more than you know. That has always sustained me in my work. That validation, we all need validation, but that validation means a lot. So the other half of the time, though, they're writing to say to me that they've experienced what we call therapy-induced trauma, which means that they went for help and they didn't get it. They didn't get it because the clinician didn't understand what they were going through, didn't really understand basically what makes the manipulator or other narcissistic character tick. And they got the wool pulled over their eyes, so things got worse. And they inevitably asked me, where the heck can we go? Who in Chicago or New York or in Orlando or wherever it is that I live, who gets it, that can really give me some help? And unfortunately, I always have to say that it long ago proved very impossible for me to keep a referral roster of people, of clinicians across the country. That's just impossible. People move, they develop different areas of expertise. It would be an impossible task to do that. So I always have to say that I can't provide a name or a situation, but I can give some general guidelines. And early on in my career, before I started specializing in disturbances of character, I did a lot of work with anxiety disorders. And I have a family predisposition toward the condition myself. And I've had two siblings, in addition, who struggled with bouts of extreme anxiety, both at the same point in their lifetime. I know that there are lots of ways that we can treat anxiety these days, but there are some cognitive behavioral strategies that really work. And they don't just work for the short term. They actually help change your brain so that you can function in a much different way than you've ever thought possible. The caller mentioned when you're dealing with anxiety, you can kind of feel like you're in a trap, like you're in a box. And people who have used the methods to overcome anxiety will tell you that it's a freeing experience. It's like life begins when you're no longer having to deal with that anxiety. It's just like a new lease on life. So I'm going to be really happy to any of you listening out there, if you happen to struggle with an anxiety problem, if you've been diagnosed with an anxiety disorder, perhaps you've even been hospitalized with what we used to call, back in the old days, a nervous breakdown, please go to the blog, contact me using the contact feature on the Contact Dr. Simon page, and I'll be glad to send you some information. There are some strategies that anyone can learn to not only manage anxiety better, but to kind of retrain your brain so that you don't have to suffer your whole life with this condition. And I'm going to be looking out in the emails here the next few days for the person I spoke with to send in, but any of you out there who have a similar problem, I'm happy to hear from you too. Well, we've got about 10 minutes left to the program. We still have time for another call if there's anybody else that wants to call in, share a situation, ask a question. The number, of course, is 501-258-8326. That's 501-258-8326, and I'll be happy to take your call. And again, some announcements. Likely that next Sunday's program, I'll be able to treat you to the entire rendition that you hear at the opening and close of the program of our theme song, America, My Home. And we do that typically at certain patriotic holidays, and Veterans Day is the one coming up, so we'll do that for Veterans Day. Then another announcement, the program Thanksgiving weekend will likely be an oldie but a goodie. Probably won't be live the Sunday following Thanksgiving Thursday. So that Thanksgiving weekend, I'm going to be traveling to visit family out of state, and it would be pretty difficult. It's doable. I could find a spot to originate the program from. We do this over the internet anyway, so I could do it. But the likelihood is that Sunday you'll be treated to a pre-recorded program, a best of, perhaps. So that's the announcement. Then, as I mentioned to the caller moments ago, I will be going back out on workshop tour next year. Going to be doing training workshops in select large population markets. We'll have information on the blog at drgeorgesimon.com, manipulative-people.com. We'll have that information up there in a couple of weeks, I hope. It may be longer than that because the itinerary has not yet been selected. But we'll have information up there, and these will be advanced training workshops. They'll be 2-day workshops. They are meant primarily for mental health professionals, but anyone can attend. But a word of caution, because they are meant for mental health professionals, they are priced accordingly because professionals will be getting their CEUs. So this is not like some of my other appearances where you pay a nominal fee at the door and there's a lot of folks and that offsets the cost. These are professional workshops. They're 2-day long. They're intensive. Anyone can come. Because the way I present my material is digestible for even lay folks. You don't have to be a professional to come. But do be prepared for a little sticker shock. But I'll still have information about those workshops up on the blog in the next few weeks. So stay tuned there. Let's see, a couple of other announcements. I mentioned before that I really want to move this program in a different direction, and I've been thinking seriously about a change in theme song. And so I'm sending out the call once again for suggestions. I've spent some time today once again reiterating why the song that we do play is relevant. It's the interdependence of freedom and character, and what has made our country a great place to live in various times in our history. It's when we have decent folks among us, a preponderance of decent folks, people of good character who honor our best ideals and live them out in their daily lives, that makes us great and makes us healthy and whole. But I'm thinking that the new direction that the program's going to be taking needs a new theme song. And it will still be character related, but what the focus is going to shift on what it looks like for people of really decent character to be working toward a more just, wholesome, healthy community, world. What it looks like for people to be coming together to make this all work a heck of a lot better than it's been working. So be thinking about that, and I am happy to hear from any of you with regard to a theme song that you think might be relevant. So just pass your suggestions along, contact me through the blog using the contact feature, and I'm happy to hear your opinions about that. And then, as I mentioned just before I took the last call, I'm going to be also talking about my evolving stance on the whole health care issue. I've been in the health field for a long time, and I've seen a lot of changes. But one thing that's becoming increasingly clear to me is that we're not going to be well as a society until we get well individually. And our personal wellness needs to be our mutual responsibility. And the nature of the game has changed. People used to be able to procure various services and pay for them out of their own pocket, because the catastrophic kinds of things that required the expense that nobody could afford on their own were covered by insurance. And insurances were set up for just that purpose, to cover the rare, extraordinarily expensive events, not the everyday things, but the rare, extraordinary events that were ungodly costly, that nobody could afford on their own. Well, that's all changed. Now hardly any service is affordable. So times have really changed, and it requires that we really look at how we care for one another and our mutual health. So we're going to be spending some time talking about that in upcoming programs, about the whole health care issue. There really shouldn't be a profit, I don't think, in the delivery of health care benefits. We do have a great free system, a pay-as-you-go kind of system, a fee-for-service kind of system. But this whole business of health insurance has become corrupted. It's not regulated like it used to be. Profits have gotten obscene. And the insurance company's entire motive is to make sure that they make a lot of money by denying people benefits. So we're going to have a discussion about that. And I invite you to participate. We'll be talking about that more and more as time goes on the program. Well, we're getting close to the end of the program. Thanks for tuning in again here at UCY.TV, Character Matters. I'm Dr. George Simon. Can't wait to visit with you again next week. Please avail yourself of the blog at manipulative-people.com, drgeorgesimon.com, and tune in again next week for another edition of Character Matters. Thanks for being with me tonight. I'm Dr. George Simon. Take care, and we'll see you next week on another edition of Character Matters. I'm not hearing our closing bumper, so I'll